Hello, everyone, and welcome to the National Association of Regional Councils Regional SolSmart webinar. Today, we've invited our partners who run the SolSmart program to tell you more about how regional organizations can get free technical assistance and support to implement solar strategies. We are going to have the opportunity to hear from a couple of regional organizations that have been through the process, and we will leave plenty of time for questions and discussion. We know that many of you are sensing a change in the types of solar projects being proposed and the rate of development. Many places in the country are seeing upticks, particularly in larger solar projects. We also know that there is an unprecedented level of investment being made right now, and that this trend is expected to continue. Whether your regional council has been actively working on solar goals and strategies, or whether this is all completely new, the SolSmart program is a great tool to help ensure you are enacting best practices and ensuring that your communities are getting solar development that is aligned with their community goals. Here with us today, we have Zach Green, the Senior Manager of Clean Energy with the U.S. Energy Program at the World Resources Institute. In this role, he supports local governments and large energy buyers achieve their energy goals by leading cohorts on innovative planning and procurement strategies, advising on regulatory and wholesale market issues, and making clean energy technologies more accessible to low and moderate income residents. Zach leads WRI's efforts as a SolSmart partner, and he previously served as program director for SolSmart at another nonprofit. We are also joined by Christine O'Neill, an environmental planner with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments in Connecticut. She holds a Master's of Energy and Environmental Management and works on projects related to waste management, recreational trails, and climate resilience. Lastly, we have Caitlin Shanahan. Caitlin is a Senior Community Planner and Outreach Coordinator at the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission in Madison, Wisconsin. In this role, she develops and promotes regional plans, supports local plans and projects, convenes collaborative efforts, and helps connect people with resources and partners. Caitlin specializes in community, land use, environmental, and hazard mitigation planning with an emphasis on outreach and communications. Thank you all for joining us today, and with that, I will now turn it over to Zach Green.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenna, for that really thoughtful introduction. And hello, everyone. Excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about SolSmart. So I'll get my slides pulled up here and we can dive right in. So I want to talk to you because I think regional organizations are really kind of a key linchpin here into our solar future. And hopefully we can get my slides actually working. Okay, there we go. So I want to talk a little bit about how you can actually effectively drive solar adoption and maximize local investment in your regions as we know solar is becoming more and more integrated into people's kind of lives and as demand increases. So just a quick acknowledgement and disclaimer that the presentation that I'm providing is funded through the U.S. Department of Energy, but that the views expressed are not of the United States government, but are of mine alone. So I think kind of fundamental to this entire discussion is just the acknowledgement that solar energy is really hot right now. There's a lot of ways I can say it, in corny ways. It's having its time in the sun. It's kind of the hottest thing going right now. But anyway, all that you should know is that solar is becoming more and more mainstream. More and more folks, whether residents or businesses, are really looking to adopt solar. And that's because in part to some significant tailwinds that we're seeing in the industry. So the federal government, through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, have really made it more accessible to go solar. And that's through some of the funding and incentives that this federal legislation has provided. We see that there are new tax incentives for clean energy, specifically solar energy. That's the investment tax credit, which now local governments and nonprofits can actually take advantage of through direct pay. And if folks are interested in learning more about direct pay and the eligibility of nonprofits actually receive that tax incentive as a direct rebate, since they're non-tax-paying entities, that's something that we can provide some more information on. But we also see these technologies being integrated in other federal programs, such as the Department of Energy's Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, or EECBG. FEMA just enabled solar and storage as part of their Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. And then of this bottom row here of some of the examples of ways the federal government's supporting solar deployment is we have three elements here of the US EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So two of these elements, the National Clean Investment Fund and the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, are going to be really instrumental in deploying low-cost capital for solar deployment. And then Solar for All is going to be providing funds so that solar can be deployed on the homes of low-income Americans. And so across all of these programs, what we're going to be seeing, along with the trends that we're already seeing in terms of the lower cost of solar generally, increasing utility rates that are driving more people to solar anyway, we're going to see a lot more residential and commercial demand for solar in the next year and 5 years and 10 years, decade to come. So what does this mean? Well, both local governments and regions really need to think about preparing for the influx of development that's going to be occurring locally. So what can you do? So regions can really be an effective partner in ensuring that this influx of grants and low-cost capital, A, comes to their region, and B, it happens and is deployed in a way that's equitable and most cost-effective to ensure that most of the funds go to the actual steel in the ground as opposed to some of the ancillary kind of services that are sometimes needed. So, regional organizations have many critical roles that they could play as they think about maximizing investment in their region and deploying some of these clean energy technologies. They can be leading planning efforts, collaborating between municipalities as well as other stakeholders in the region, considering the deployment of technologies on a regional scale. So, this obviously is a solar specific webinar, but when we're thinking about things like electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, a lot of times that is more appropriate to think about on a regional scale to ensure that we're developing a network that is most effective for the MSA or for the region. Regional organizations can also support in developing grant applications. Some of these programs that the federal government are deploying are formula grants and others are competitive. And especially on the competitive side, it's really valuable to have staff at regional organizations who have kind of a different vantage point and potentially more opportunity to support the drafting of these grants, to kind of lead the way and really bring along communities that might need the extra assistance or might not have the capacity to actually get these things completed and submitted. And then finally, and this is really where we're going to be focused on today, is this idea of raising awareness and helping to educate on some best practices around these technologies. And so as you're thinking about preparation for this influx in demand and influx in deployment of clean energy and solar and this increasing demand, regional organizations can really do a lot of work in ensuring that their members address local barriers that inflate the cost of installing solar or potentially disallow their residents and businesses to install solar entirely. And these are things like complex permitting processes, restrictive zoning ordinance language, knowledge gaps between consumers and developers. So these are all kind of key issues that regional organizations can support. And SolSmart, which is the focus of today's webinar, is really there to support your region. So as you work to address some of these barriers, to educate members, SolSmart can be a great partner in helping you work with your members and working through best practices. So what is SolSmart? SolSmart is a technical assistance and designation program that's funded by the U.S. Department of Energy through the Solar Energy Technologies Office. You can see here on the right, the team of organizations that support the program, including my own, WRI. But we have a pretty broad group of really knowledgeable experts that can work with you and have worked with communities over decades to ensure that these types of best practices can be understood and implemented. So to do that, we have a technical assistance element of the program, which is designed to help local governments and regional organizations make it faster, easier, and more affordable to go solar. And then the program recognizes communities and regional organizations that have taken key steps to address these barriers and really trying to uplift them as being kind of open for solar business, thereby attracting more solar companies and development, and again, helping to maximize the dollars from these federal programs. So what does SolSmart really do in terms of supporting with enhanced solar development? The SolSmart program is really focused on what are called soft costs. Those are the non-hardware costs of going solar, so not like the steel and the panels, but other elements of solar installation that actually can increase the cost. So things like complex permitting processes that increase costs for residents, or zoning ordinances that might disallow solar in certain locations or require special permits in others. And so the program really focuses on three core things when we're thinking about how can you try to reduce these soft costs of a solar installation. And those are really focused on increasing transparency How do you make processes and programs at the local level more transparent to developers, but also to residents and business owners that might want to install solar? How do you increase understanding of solar energy technologies, both among municipal and regional organization staff, as well as community members? And what can you do? What types of barriers can be reduced? Whether it's streamlining permitting processes, whether it's changing language in a zoning ordinance, how can we reduce barriers to make it easier for community members to install solar? And then SolSmart really tries to support those kind of three tenets by one, identifying barriers and the related opportunities to address them, and then also providing that direct technical assistance to actually support the implementation of those best practices. So we kind of highlight what those best practices are, and then we can help you actually achieve them. And I think this testimonial that we have from a sustainability coordinator in Red Lodge, Montana, just underscores kind of some of the current barriers, as well as some of the ways that SolSmart can hopefully help your communities and your regions address some of these kind of key stumbling blocks. So SolSmart again is kind of focused on best practices, and these best practices are really laid out in the program guides that the program offers. These program guides cover some of the key criteria that you can achieve as either a local government or a regional organization that will make it easier and easier for community members and for your region to go solar. So for local governments, we have the kind of regular program guide here that consists of 92 best practice criteria across 5 solar ready categories. You can see the categories here of permitting and inspection, planning and zoning, government operations, community engagement, and market development, as well as some of the criteria that we've established. And you can see some points totals next to it. When we get into talking about the designation, there is a kind of an element of reaching a certain level of points for each of the designation tiers. And so that's what those points are referring to. You'll also see we have a program guide specifically for regional organizations. And this program guide for regional organizations really focuses on some of the core competencies and core strengths of regional organizations. So their convening power, the ability to deploy best practices, to have a regional lens through which they can look at some of these key issues. And so that's what we really the program tries to uplift through this program guide, and it presents the opportunity for regional organizations to also achieve designation. So again, in order to support the adoption of these best practices, SolSmart does provide technical assistance or direct support to a variety of different stakeholders. So that could be elected officials, local and regional staff, as well as community members. The technical assistance that the program provides comes at no cost, so it's free to folks accessing the program. However, program participants do just have to commit to working towards designation to unlock that technical assistance. And as I mentioned before, this is really being delivered by some renowned experts. Folks on the team have been working on these issues not just for years, but for decades. And so there's a lot of history here, a lot of experience working with communities, and folks have been working with hundreds of communities and regions nationwide. And just to give you a sample, we do have a lot of ways that you can access this technical assistance. We do feasibility assessments for potential solar arrays on municipal sites or regional organization sites. We also help with solar procurement. We help with stakeholder engagement to help formulate plans. To all, so basically from the planning stage all the way through implementation and measurement and verification, SolSmart can be there to help you. And we really try to tailor that assistance to meet your direct needs. And that assistance comes in many different flavors. So we have templates and checklists that we have available through our resource repository online, as well as examples from communities that have already done these things in the past. We also provide direct technical assistance that's really tailored. It can be on one-on-one calls, but we also have trainings and webinars that we deploy as well. So I mentioned that the program has kind of 2 elements, the technical assistance piece and then the designation component. So just briefly on the designation side, there are 4 levels of designation, and both local governments as well as regional organizations can receive a designation, again, using whatever their distinct pathway. So I mentioned the guides, and those guides provides the relevant pathways for those different types of entities. But there's 4 tiers of designation: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And you get to those different levels by completing prerequisites or required actions that you have to complete, as well as achieving other elective criteria and meeting a certain points threshold. And again, each of the criteria that we have has a certain point value associated with it. So you just kind of choose from the list of which ones you're interested in achieving, and we'll get you to that desired tier of designation. Just to give you a landscape view, SolSmart is working in over 43 states, as well as District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. And about 117 million people nationwide, or 1 in 3 residents, actually live in a SolSmart designated community. You can see here on the right our updated designation totals, with over 525 designees nationwide. But turning more specifically now to the regional organizations in our program, we do have 16 regional organizations that are designated by the SolSmart program, and we know that even more are working not only with SolSmart, but more broadly to support their members in better understanding solar and how it is best treated in a region. And so I want to give you, I'm fortunate enough to get to work with a lot of regional organizations across the country. Right now, I'm working in Virginia and Texas with regional organizations that are specifically interested in SolSmart. So on the left, we have a photograph from Plan RVA, which is in Richmond, Virginia. They hosted a day-long session that was really focused on solar-related issues related to small and large-scale solar siting. So Plan RVA actually developed a solar mapping tool to help their members understand where a prime solar development might be within the region. And then they had a broader discussion about how that would impact communities, what communities thought about that, and trying to refine that tool to better support countywide and city-specific zoning and other regulations. And then I'm also fortunate enough to be working in Texas with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. NCT COG is actually running what we call a cohort for their members, which is basically just a fancy word for kind of like a workshop series for their members that basically help them to go and achieve designation. And so just to give you a little bit more background into that engagement, the COG is actually running a 5-month-long, 5-session cohort where they're leading and SolSmart staff are providing some technical support to provide trainings, to walk communities basically through the designation process and to provide them with really in-depth understanding of solar energy in the region. The cohort itself will get folks to at least the bronze or silver designation, and it has a lot of other benefits too. We're bringing in experts to talk through key issues in this space. We're allowing local governments to and the COG members to actually have peer interaction to discuss their successes, their challenges, their lessons learned. And through doing this, we're really providing them with an expedited way to not only receive SolSmart designation, but also to gain a better understanding of kind of the regional issues here and really work together as a region to meet some of the of the issues that are in front of them. And so with that, I want to just note that if folks are interested in learning more about SolSmart or actually talking with a SolSmart staff member about the program, you can go to solsmart.org, click on Join SolSmart and fill out this little kind of form. We'll get back to you, but there's a lot of opportunities that we have to support your region, especially at this time when there's this growing demand for solar. So with that, please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A function. Happy to answer those in a little bit, or feel free to email me at zach.green@wri.org. And with that, I'll stop sharing. I'm going to pass it over to Christine O'Neill for her segment of the presentation. Thank you all.
Here. Okay, great. Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Christine. I'm an environmental planner with the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. And Zach gave us a very sort of technical look at the SolSmart program. I'm going to approach this from the point of view of where I was sitting 2 years ago, where I was sort of a prospective client of SolSmart, trying to evaluate if this would make sense for our region. So first, I wanted to talk a little bit about what our region is. So we are the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. You can see our, whoops. Oh, I guess my little picture didn't come through. But we are in West Central Connecticut. You can see where we're located in the state here. And we serve a very wide variety of communities with populations as small as 3,000 up to as large as 115,000. It's a diverse community, and we have 19 member municipalities. And what I know every sort of regional organization is a little different, especially state to state. So what I sort of wanted to do is just level set and explain what a COG does and what it is. So we support and advise our member municipalities, but unlike some other regional organizations like a county government, we don't make laws, we don't tax, we are a planning agency. And so we help our municipalities achieve economies of scale. We help them sort of bridge the gap between, in Connecticut, 169 towns and 1 state. We support the municipalities sometimes as adjunct staff. And while our sort of first responder civil servants are in the towns putting out fires, dealing with residents, dealing with this or that development proposal, we sort of have the luxury of engaging in like longer range, larger scale regional planning. So one of those things would be SolSmart, right? Looking at a big picture thing. And one of the things that really struck me about SolSmart is that they had this regional pathway, which I'm sure everyone on this call can empathize with this. As regions, we sometimes get forgotten, right? Because everyone can agree what a state is, and everyone can agree what a town is. But for regions, they're different. They overlap. A watershed region might be different than a transportation planning region, and so they often get left out of programs like these. So it was very cool to find this regional pathway. And what I'd like to do now, I'll just briefly mention another reason we were attracted to this is because although we don't actually do a lot of energy planning, it works very nicely with a lot of what I would call the energy adjacent work that we do. So transportation planning obviously has huge implications for energy. If we're trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled, we're trying to get people off gas powered cars, whether that's building out EV infrastructure or pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure. And another thing we do, obviously, is land use, the planning with a capital P that you're most used to. And so energy comes into that a lot, with energy efficiency by creating denser development. And another one is waste. I deal a lot with garbage. It's a huge concern in New England. We're running out of space to put our trash, and obviously big energy implications there. So here's the meat and potatoes. I wanted to go over what we actually did as an organization to get our designations. This is not a comprehensive list, but I thought I'd sort of highlight a few of the key actions we took. The ones with asterisks are the ones that were required, but I am going to give a little disclaimer. So the program guidance changed for the regional organizations in the middle of our application process. And SolSmart was super gracious and said you could actually stick with the old guidance or the new guidance, or the new rules if you want. So they were very accommodating. So I'm just going to hop right in and go through these. So the first thing you have to do is get a solar statement. This is super easy. As a regional organization, you probably write resolutions that you get passed by your board all the time. This is really no different. It's just a signed commitment from in our case, the chief elected officials in our region, but I think whatever sort of legislative or governing body your regional organization has. And that kind of kicked us off and basically said, we give you our blessing to start looking into this program and doing the actions. The next thing we did, and this is a really good starting point, was creating this landing page. The page is our website /solar. And this became a hub for all the work we were about to do. We included some basic information about SolSmart, and then we got into compiling resources. We chose to sort of lay it out where we separated resources for residents and developers, which is a little more public facing, and then also resources for municipalities. That's our usual fare as we help the municipalities. So things that, someone who wants to put solar on their roof might not be as interested in, how to streamline the permitting process. We did solar map and metrics, and we also made sure that all our press, the solar statement and stuff was linked there. And just as an example, this is what it looked like, pretty clean. These are just little drop downs. And for municipal solar resources, we had created a regional inspection checklist to make it nice and easy and standardized when the building officials went out. We had 3 different trainings we'll talk about in a sec here, but we made sure those were all in one place. So you just drop down, click on the YouTube link and watch it. And that should make it nice and easy for municipalities. The next thing we did was some municipal staff trainings. And again, if your regional organization is like ours, this is your bread and butter. You're always doing things like, creating a training module for staff. We ended up holding 3, one on permitting, one on inspection, and then more of a general one on best practices for both. They were fully virtual, so that made it nice and easy. Virtual works better regionally anyway. And so SolSmart actually provided the speaker, which just made it incredibly, like almost stupid easy to do this. There's no reason not to hold these trainings and get some SolSmart points for it. But we also had a Connecticut-based expert at each of these trainings to answer specific questions. But here's the really cool thing. So we talked with the State Office of Building Officials, and we were able to offer continuing education credits for the building officials in our state that attended this. So this is really cool, right? It's a win-win-win. We get SolSmart points. It makes NVCOG look good. And then 100 plus attendees from across the state, even outside our region, were able to get some of the training they need, both for their job and to be a better inspector. So it was really just like a feel-good all-around thing. One of the other things we got points for was sort of building out the resource section on our website, and that included compiling specific resources for like particular land uses. So one thing was parking lots. We have a really fantastic organization in Connecticut called People's Action for Clean Energy. They did a build out of all the potential solar canopies over like big parking lots in the state of Connecticut that have capacity for solar. So linking a map like that, linking grant programs for putting solar on brownfields. We have an airport in our region, so the technical guidance on that. And rural areas, we linked the Rural Grazers, or I should say Solar Grazers Association. Very cute pictures of like little lambs eating between the solar panels. But yeah, so a bunch of articles and information right there for anyone who needs it. This was the most, I would say, intensive action we did. We created a regional solar map, and that was what fed into that was a bunch of data and metrics. What we looked at was total installed capacity, per capita installed capacity, and the number of solar installations for each town and then for the region. We have a phenomenal GIS team, so that made the mapping part of this very easy, but gathering the data was a lot. And that was because the utilities have all this data, but they're not super forthcoming with it. And so it was like a lot of phone calls and like making a big old messy spreadsheet and trying to add things together. I did this one time and it took me many hours, and I have not updated it since. I'm not required to through SolSmart, and I probably should, but for it to continue to be a resource for people. But SolSmart just kind of said, do this one time, create this one resource. We're not going to be like checking up on you again and again, which was nice because I wasn't sure if this is something I would have the capacity to do in the future. That's another thing with SolSmart. You don't need to recertify every year or anything like that, which was a huge comfort to us because we have different grants and projects coming in, and we never quite know what our capacity is going to be. Last thing I'll mention for our actions is that we had to table at community events and got some points for that. And this is something we do anyway to promote all our other programs and promote ourselves as an agency. And we just printed out a simple sheet that directed people to our Solar Hub, which has all the resources, and tried to encourage people to learn more about solar. And we made a lot of connections, started conversations with residents. It was quite simple. It was something we were pretty much doing anyway, and it got us some points. We were very pleased to be able to earn the bronze designation in 2022. And then just recently, about 5 months ago, we earned our silver designation by getting a few more points. Again, the list I went through wasn't comprehensive. We did some other things as well. So just to wrap up, why did we end up choosing SolSmart? Why did it work for us? The first thing is that it allowed us to provide services for our towns rather than asking or putting us in a position where we need to ask our towns to do things. Again, the way our COG is structured, or at least COGs in Connecticut, is we serve our towns. And so this gave us an opportunity to like provide all this technical assistance, make resources, do trainings, and provide value to them. We loved the specific pathway for regional organizations. This was also a lot of stuff. A lot of the actions are things that COGs already do. So it fit really nicely within our skill sets. And finally, SolSmart makes everybody look good. It makes your towns look good, makes the region look good. And of course, hopefully it has that real impact of reducing soft costs. I'll finish my conversation there, but I do hope you put some questions in the chat for me. I'd be happy to talk about it. And with that, I will turn it over to Caitlin. stop sharing.
Oh, all right. The tech worked with me instead of against me this time. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin Shanahan. I'm a senior community planner for the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission in Madison, Wisconsin. So I will start off by talking a little bit about our agency, our region, and from there describe how we got involved in SolSmart and some of the outcomes and the benefits that we experienced from engaging in the designation process. So CARPC, Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, is one of 9 regional planning commissions in Wisconsin. We primarily work in Dane County in south central Wisconsin. As you can see from this map, we're the only single county RPC in the state. And we are funded primarily through the county property tax levy, but we're not part of the county government. We're an independent unit. So our region is on the smaller side, but there is a lot going on. We've got the state capital, Madison, Wisconsin, with a Big Ten university. So we have a lot of people that are educated, that are graduating, and they want to stay. We have a lot of industries that support relatively high-paying jobs, though, of course, it's an ongoing challenge to make sure that everyone can access education, income, other resources equally. We've got abundant natural resources in our region, particularly water resources. And the result has been that, for the last several thousand years, lots of people have wanted to be here. And today, responsible, sustainable use of those resources continues to be a big focus for a lot of our planning efforts. We are growing rapidly. We've got, a little over 500,000 people now. We're the fastest growing county in Wisconsin for the last several years. We're expecting another 200,000 people by 2050. And as we grow, we're diversifying. So we've got about a quarter of our population identifying as Hispanic and or a race other than white. And we have quite a few different levels of government working in our area as well. So as I mentioned, state capital, we've got 8 cities, 20 villages, 32 townships. We have the county government, and then we also have CARPC, the Regional Planning Commission, that has kind of that same jurisdictional boundary, but it is different, separate entity working on different things. We also have a regional economic development organization that has an 8-county region. Dane County is included in their region. But a totally different boundary. And we have an MPO that is working on transportation planning, but for part of the county, not the full county, not all the communities within it. So kind of a lot of strange overlapping boundaries and authorities. And the planning responsibilities in our area are divided up across multiple agencies. So it can be a little weird, a little confusing, but the main result is really that we end up working together a lot, and we end up kind of cross-referencing each other's plans and programs. So in Wisconsin, local communities establish RPCs to address issues that go beyond municipal boundaries. What those specific issues are varies by region, but for CARPC, our 2 main buckets are land use and water quality. We administer kind of long range, broad, big picture regional plans in both of those areas. And we also bring communities together to work on smaller plans and initiatives that support our various land use and water quality goals. One thing that's important to note is that CARPC does not regulate land use. We don't establish ordinances, we don't issue permits, and we don't conduct other types of regional planning like a workforce development or anything like that. Although, as I mentioned, we do partner quite closely with other regional entities to kind of coordinate the overall planning landscape. So in that land use bucket, CARPC is statutorily responsible for creating a plan for the physical development of the region. The current iteration of that is our 2050 Regional Development Framework, which is an advisory guide for incorporating regional goals into local decisions. And those three main goals are to increase equitable access to opportunity, to conserve key resources and most relevant for this presentation, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build climate resilience. So we've got our climate goal in our land use plan, and the county also administers a climate action plan that has a goal to meet 1/3 of county electricity use through solar by 2030. So the County Office of Energy and Climate Change is the department that's leading the charge on that. And they were the ones who originally decided to pursue SolSmart designation at the county level as a means to make renewable energy more readily available throughout the region. And as they were kind of formulating their approach to that, they recognized that other organizations like CARPC, like our local governments, also have climate and emissions goals. And so really we all need to be working to make solar happen in order to reach them. And the thought was that pursuing SolSmart designation could help us all do that more effectively. So they reached out to us as kind of the convener of choice for the region. And our initial plan was for county, OECC, CARPC, and then hopefully at least 2 other municipalities to work together on making renewable energy more available through the SolSmart process. I would say the selling points for us from the regional perspective, one was that we saw SolSmart as a channel for implementing our regional development framework. So that's our regional land use plan. We had some experience leading collaborative projects related to tree canopy, green infrastructure. And so it kind of seemed to build on those efforts, but take it to the next level into a different arena. And we also liked that designation requires communities to implement best practices that really do ultimately make it faster, easier, more affordable for residents and businesses to help install and access solar energy. And we were excited to be able to help our communities do this. So as I mentioned, we don't do ordinances, we don't do regulations or permitting. We don't even own the building that we work in. So we knew right off the bat that those were not going to be areas that we were getting points for our designation process. And we really needed to lean into our role as a convening organization. So, we're pursuing our own designation, but really the big goal is that we're trying to help communities get the local designations, partly because those on the ground kind of best practices, updating your zoning code, updating your permitting process, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where you're really going to get a big impact. And we also like that it gave us the chance to work with communities to have the discussion. What are the priorities? What are the preferences? What are the best practices for solar development that makes sense in our area? And one of the things that we really appreciated throughout the process was that SolSmart was very flexible, very understanding of our region's kind of unique division of responsibilities and what we could realistically accomplish given our structure and our focus areas. So we did, all the required things that Christine described, solar statement, landing page, et cetera. We also had a zoning code assessment project that was already in the works. And so as we started the SolSmart process right around the time that was getting started, we collaborated with SolSmart to identify best practices. SolSmart also reviews zoning codes as part of their local designation process. So it was a really good fit. And we were able to identify barriers to PV installation in local zoning codes throughout our region. And we could recommend some revisions in some cases to help remove those barriers. So as we were starting our collaborative approach to the SolSmart designation, our kind of mantra was that we can go farther, faster together. So we want to be working toward our shared goals. We felt like if we were all working together, it would magnify the impact of our individual efforts and hopefully help us move through the designation process a little bit more quickly and efficiently than we might have been able to do on our own. Also aiming for the end goal that we would have consistent practices and shared knowledge across municipal boundaries. So having a consistent marketplace throughout the region. Our process was really nothing fancy. I would call it a simple cohort model, maybe like a pared down version of the one that Zach described going on in North Central Texas. I felt like it was enough structure to give us support for getting it done and to kind of maintain momentum, but it wasn't, overly burdensome in and of itself. We had monthly check-in meetings where we talked about, oh, what did you put in your zoning code? What documentation did you submit for this criteria? So it would be us, CARBC, the County Office of Energy and Climate Change, and all of our communities that were working towards designation. And that really helped us help each other understand and meet the criteria. We also were able to leverage resources that others had developed. So for example, the Office of Energy and Climate Change has a webpage on homeowners association covenants that prohibit or limit the use or the installation of rooftop solar in residential developments. Wisconsin is a solar by right state. Those types of covenants are not really consistent with state law, but that isn't always understood or known by residents or even by the HOAs themselves. So being able to have that information in one spot, we can all direct to that one spot. Everyone is getting the same information, consistent messaging. That saved us all a lot of time, and I think has a better outcome. So we also were able to partner together on hosting trainings for local staff. So CARBC and the county, we would get our points for hosting. Attendees would get points for attending the training. So a win-win in that respect. And finally, instead of kind of all gathering our own data, creating our own solar maps, for example, we were able to compile all of our information and create one map that we can then all reference, and we can keep updating it that way. So just a way to minimize duplication of efforts and maximize our impact. How did it turn out? Well, it actually went better than we expected, which you can't always say with some of our planning processes and programs. We've got 5 designations and counting as of this spring. We'd hoped to get at least 2 other communities designated. We ended up getting 3, and then we've got another one that we expect to submit for gold this summer. Dane County ended up getting the first platinum designation in the country, and Sun Prairie ended up getting the second platinum city designation in the country. The other one is in California. So I feel like that's pretty good for a place that most people don't think of as being kind of sunny and solar ready. So that was like a little feather in our cap. So kind of beyond getting the plaque and the good press, we did feel like the process provided tangible benefits to our communities. So as I mentioned, the trainings for municipal staff, and Zach said too, we're seeing more and more interest in solar development in our area, more and more permit applications coming through. And so we want to help local planning and zoning departments be equipped to process them confidently, efficiently, and help them prepare for solar proactively rather than reactively. So they get ready, they know what to expect, and they feel like they can handle it. For the planning and zoning workshop, we had an in-person workshop. We brought in city staff from a SolSmart Gold City in another part of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. We had the director of the Midwestern Renewable Energy Association, and we also had a local solar developer to provide kind of the developer's perspective. The permitting and inspection webinar we held virtually, and we had NREL experts talking to our communities that way. Both sessions are recorded. They're, an existing resource for our communities. And I think it was a nice opportunity for us to pull in kind of state and national experts and information, connect our communities to that at no cost to the communities. The second kind of tangible outcome that I wanted to highlight is that we worked with the Office of Energy and Climate Change, the County Planning and Zoning Department, and the County Land and Water Resources Department on a model solar ordinance. So we updated and customized a 2020 solar ordinance that was prepared by the Great Plains Institute, and we made it, really kind of what we want to see for our area. And so I think that is another kind of lasting resource that now communities, if they're interested in updating their own codes, they have this resource ready to go. It's already been looked at by multiple levels of government in this area. And finally, it was really exciting to support communities as they did the great work that they did to earn their designations. So Sun Prairie, which is our platinum city, part of the SolSmart process was that they launched the Solar App Plus app, which is an app to streamline permitting. They were a pilot community, so they received a $15,000 prize for participating in that pilot. And they ended up turning around and using the prize as foundational funding for solar on 5 new Habitat for Humanity homes. Habitat is going to install the panels, they're going to monitor usage and share that data back with the city. And so now they were able to create this ongoing partnership that will hopefully result long-term in installing even more solar on low-income homes. I think all of our communities amended their zoning ordinance in some way in order to earn their designations. I know Sun Prairie purchased renewable energy credits to offset their municipal energy usage, and they also installed solar on one of their municipal facilities. So yeah, other than that, I would say the biggest kind of takeaway is that we still have this ongoing relationship and collaboration. Our monthly check-in meeting has now transitioned into more of a sustainability work group. So we are still working together and plan to keep doing so in the future, even now that most of our designations have been earned. So I think that was another really valuable thing that came out of this process for us. So with that is all I have. I will pass it back to Shanna, maybe, if I can find my buttons. And I think we're going to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Christine and Caitlin, for sharing your experience. And thank you to Zach for that great information on the SolSmart program and how we can prepare for the future of solar. Like Caitlin said, we will now be beginning the Q&A portion of this webinar. And our first question, are there any measurable outcomes for the county governments versus local municipalities in NVCOG or CARPC?
So maybe I could start. One of the things that actually tipped the scales for NVCOG to say, yes, we want to do this, is that we didn't specifically have to get any of our towns certified, because again, that's not really our model. We don't come to them and ask them to do things. It's sort of the other way around. So in terms of measurable outcomes for what we did, I would say that we've created a new online resource hub. I would say that we've trained dozens of these municipal officials and also provided some of them with these continuing education credits that they need in order to do their jobs. And I would say that we've also, I don't know that I would call this measurable, but we've incorporated in our planning. One of the things we did is we're doing our regional plan of conservation and development, which we need to update every 10 years. And we'll be including solar goals in that because of this process. So I don't know that it's like a dollar and cents thing. I don't know that I am able to give that satisfying an answer. I was actually super impressed that Caitlin with her work was able to get so many towns over the finish line, because a lot of our towns are kind of want to wash their hands. They're too busy. They don't want, so just, being able to provide those resources is kind of where we have a natural stopping point. But I would love, I know some of our towns are really trying to convince the elected officials to take up the mantle.
Thank you, Christine. And our next question is, what resources are available for solar maintenance post-installation?
I think I'm happy to speak to that. So operation and maintenance obviously are some key issues here, and become even more so now that local governments are thinking more about kind of ownership of systems versus of their own ownership of systems versus like a third-party ownership model, right? So as more local governments deploy systems that they own, better understanding what those operation and maintenance kind of issues are is going to be critical to maintaining those systems, making sure that they continue to provide the benefit to themselves or to whomever is the owner of that system. And so what I would say is we do have resources to help better understand, like if you need to go out for procuring like an O&M like a contractor to support that process. We can support you with that. There's also more resources that the national labs are putting out about kind of what to be looking for if you're doing your own operation and maintenance kinds of checklists and the like. So there are a lot of resources that SolSmart communities can have access to, as well as having some direct communications with some of the experts who work on O&M issues regularly, if those are key things that communities are interested in.
Our next question is, what are the key benefits of SolSmart designation to your regional organization and jurisdictions?
Can answer one. So yeah, I think for our region, the benefit is that, I mean, the number one thing that we're always trying to do is connect people, connect with our communities. We like to kind of be our community's hype man, if you will, and try to build up what is happening locally and support it in any way that we can. So this was a really good avenue for us to be able to do that as a regional entity. I think for our jurisdictions, a lot of the outcomes, they are the ones that do have more control of the physical development and things happening on the ground. And so adopting the best practices that are recommended by SolSmart help change that for the better, change their kind of internal processes and the things that are possible under their local codes for the better. So I would say, quick answer, those are my top two benefits of a SolSmart designation.
And going off of that question, based on your experience working with various communities, what are some key lessons learned or notable best practices that you would recommend to others who are interested in implementing solar energy policies?
So I gave an answer so long here, they literally told me to stop typing. Like I ran out of space. But okay, so I think the most important thing is make it easy for them. Our municipal staff is always overwhelmed. They are first responders. They're putting out fires. Draft language for them. Create like a resolution. Even something, it might seem like kind of micromanagey, but they don't need to use it if they don't want to, but like, create a timeline or a process sheet of, you draft the ordinance, you bring it to this group, they approve it, then you bring in the advisory body or what have you. As easy as you can make it, spoon feed it to them so that they really just have to go through the steps that you've already laid out for them. I think that's as a regional organization. And again, I'm speaking from the same place as Caitlin does, where, we don't have control over a lot of this stuff. We can adopt planning goals. We can't adopt policy. We don't make laws. So, making it as easy as possible. And then the other thing I would say is convince them it's worth it. Do the research, write a memo, go back to your, college thesis days and get some, works cited in there and make the argument that this is going to make a difference and it's important.
Thank you, Christine. And I have a question for Zach. How do you envision SolSmart's continued role in advancing solar energy adoption nationwide?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think Deb might have provided an answer in the chat, but I'm happy to also build on that. I mentioned several of the greenhouse gas reduction fund opportunities that are coming out through the EPA. These are really targeted at helping to ensure that low and moderate income households across the country are able to access solar and be part of the clean energy transition. And I think SolSmart is a program that's really focused on, as part of the Justice 40 initiative, to really focus benefits on ensuring that disadvantaged communities actually receive benefit, not only from SolSmart, but also part of the transition. I think that's where we're looking at in the future of what can we do to ensure that uptake of solar is accessible to everyone. And so really trying to focus on how can we reduce those kind of soft costs that don't really support installation of solar, right? They just kind of go to administrative processes. They kind of get lost along the way. They don't bring value to the consumers. How can we reduce those costs so that we can install more systems using those dollars and really bring them further to have the most significant impact as possible on in low and moderate income households and across disadvantaged communities across the country. So I think that's where we're looking forward to in the future, and just ensuring that we're continuing to keep pace with what the communities need. We know that needs change over time. We're always listening, always trying to tailor the program to meet what those new needs are. And so, again, changes in the tax incentives and things necessitate different conversations as folks are leaning more into owning their own systems. The O&M conversation, that's something that I don't think I'd ever dealt with before, kind of, a couple of years ago, because that was always built in the procurements that folks were doing. And so just making sure that we're staying up to date and responsive to what communities' needs are as that ecosystem is changing.
Great. Thank you again to our panelists for sharing how SolSmart can support regional organizations to implement solar strategies. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. And with that, have a great rest of your week.